What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another Procreate tutorial. This one is using the brushes from the 5.4 update. I've been messing around with a few different versions of the brushes and I found some that we can put together to create this lovely autumnal landscape design. Now, as always, you're going to need all of the requirements for today's design, and they are the canvas size, the palette and the guide, all of which are available completely for free using the link in the description down below, which takes you over to my Patreon, and you can grab all of the requirements again completely for free for this YouTube tutorial. Again, links in the description down below. And while you're there, check it out, because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters, and the catalogue sits at well over 150 exclusive tutorials that are not available here on YouTube. They're only available on Patreon, and that catalogue continues to grow because I add 3 more every single month. So with all that said, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Let's get started. So once you've created your canvas, you'll be able to see on mine that I've added in the guide. And to do that, you just go up to your actions, you go to the option of add, and you insert it as a photo or a file, depending on where you saved it to on your device. It's a PNG, meaning that the empty space there will be empty. So on the guide here, I've simply otherwise tapped on it and tapped on rename and called it guide. Let's go ahead then, and once you've done that, tap on your background color, change it to the color in the top right of the palette. We're then going to hit done. We're going to create a new layer and drag it underneath our guide. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here, top of the 5th column. We're going to go to our selection tool, rectangle, and you want to tap on color fill until it turns blue. And then you can see this kind of line running across the horizon here. Just going to draw in a box and let go, because color fill's turned on, it fills it in for you. And you tap on your selection tool when you're done. Let's then go ahead and create a new layer again. Go to your colors, top left of the palette this time. Go back to your brushes. Now, I am going to be using the Procreate 5.4 update, fairly new, but it might not be by the time you're watching this. So we are in the Procreate 5.4 library. We're in pens. We're going to use the Liffey brush just to get us started. And the size doesn't really matter too much. Got it set to 15 if you're interested. And I'm going to follow this line here that comes through the tree, comes along here, make it a little bit wobbly and jumpy and bumpy if you can, and then down, and then drag and drop your color into that area. We are then going to go ahead and draw in the tree itself. So we're going to tap on the layer we just worked on and bring its opacity down to around about 50%. We're also going to tap on the guide and tap on that, and I'm just going to bring it down in opacity because I don't need it to be super strong at this point. I'm going to create a new layer and drag it underneath the guide. The guide should always typically be at the very top. And then we're going to go ahead and draw in our tree trunk. At the bottom here, you can see some roots. So I'm going to sort of start off by sort of drawing them in and getting that into the tree trunk. I'm going to come down the tree trunk and just let that kind of run off to the end. It's quite a wide tree today compared to potentially other ones that I've done in the past. It's quite wide in comparison. So you're going to keep going, and we're going to try and sort of draw that into around about kind of here at the bottom. I'm just kind of drawing in some additional lines and then some additional kind of root lines, all running off, getting progressively, you know, a little bit kind of wobbly and bumpier and lumpier, etc., as they make their way away from the tree. And then you can just kind of connect them all together like so. And then let's just go ahead and just draw a line across so that you can drag and drop your color in. And then you can see your root system. Something a little like that will do the trick. And then let's go ahead and draw in the actual tree trunk. Now you want to go up from the very top edge up here. I didn't have enough space there. I'm just going to go ahead and draw in the tree. And then I'm going to just let that get like a little bit kind of thinner towards the top. Now don't worry so much about sort of making sure it looks anything sort of fancy up here, because it's going to get covered up by all of the leaves in a second anyway. It's this area here that runs all the way across is what we're quite interested in. So I'm pressing extremely firm now, and I'm just going to try and make sure my brush, you know, gets quite janky and wobbly, etc., as I make my way away. And I'm just going to wiggle my pen along it to create branches, and they can just spiral off. They can run across one another. As I always say, that's always the best thing. I think they look the best. And then you want to just make sure that's nice and kind of chunky down and into the tree itself. We'll run off some additional lines off the back. So what I'm doing is I'm pressing really firm to get the pressure of the pen, and then I'm just trying to let go really lightly just towards the end of the branch to give myself those really lovely thin lines. And I'm also trying to add in wiggles and wobbles, etc., and just add in, where possible, you know, little miniature levels of kind of detail. Now, to be honest, from here, you're just going to go ahead and just keep building in your tree system. So you can make some big chunky branches. You can have some, you know, just run off, and they can be, you know, a little bit more of a straight line in comparison. They can run off like a little bit over here perhaps, and then just keep snapping off like other branch lines. Don't do too much, but you definitely want to have like a whole system going on. You can see me just introducing new ones occasionally, and sometimes they can just be like little low-hanging ones as well. Lots of small miniature little sort of ones on the end, these little sort of break-offs, maybe new little shoots here and there. All in all though, again, you are going to cover this up a little bit with what will eventually be the primary brush for this tutorial, so you don't need to add in too much at this particular stage. Roughly something like that actually does the trick. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and start colouring this in. Now we're going to go ahead and just create a new layer in front of the tree. You can swipe from left to right here if you want to on both of them, the new layer and the tree, and just group them together and just rename the group and call it tree, just to keep your layers nice and organised. And then this empty layer here, you don't want it clipped. You just want to go to your colours and grab the purple in the middle of the second column. We then want to go to our brush of choice, which is right at the very bottom, and it's under the category of creative, and it's this brush here, Vincenzo, I'm going to call it. Maximum opacity size can be around about that 20% marker just to get us started. Now let's just take a look at the brush just to get us started. Look, you can see we've got all these like little dashes, etc. It's very kind of grungy almost. Now we're going to use that as if they're lots of individual little leaves, etc. throughout the tree. So just scatter your pen along the branches, and if you're pressing like kind of quite lightly, you will end up adding in like quite light patches, and that's fine. We will chunk them out in a second. I just want to go ahead and basically just sort of coat everything with like a few scatters and a little bit of push here and there. So I'm just pushing to cluster it all in a little bit in certain areas. Now we are above our tree, meaning we can also introduce like leaves running across the tree as well. They don't have to necessarily be attached to a branch. They can just be wherever you fancy. I just want to go ahead and, again, as I said, just with this initial size, just get those kind of scatterings in there just to give some of the branches some love. Then I'm going to make the brush size a little bit smaller, about 11%, because I can actually, if you drag the brush rather than tap and push, you can actually add in a lot stronger, more saturated leaves in here. So you can see there, some of the lines there are a little bit darker. Obviously, they are a little bit more drawn in. Now, you can make your brush size back to what we had it, which was the 20% marker. And once you kind of got your general kind of layering in, you can just start to scatter these in. So I'm going to be quite bold now at the top here and just tap and push, tapping and pushing and dragging at the same time, just to kind of fill out the tree. I don't want this tree to be super dense with leaves either. Like I want it to have a good amount of sort of spacing in between it. It's autumnal. It's meant to show that it's like thinning a little bit. That'll be absolutely fine. Just a few little pushes along there. And then maybe just go a smidge smaller, like 15% here and there, especially towards the ends, if you want to go ahead and just patch in some additional like little leaves here and there, just to add in a little bit of more density here and there. I definitely want to make sure it just runs across this tree with a little bit more density as well, like a branch is perhaps, you know, facing us. And I do want to cover up the tree to a degree as well, like so that there's like this kind of lovely blend between what's in front and what's potentially behind as well. It's really simple to do. So we just add in a little bit more density here, a little bit more definitely towards the outside edges of the frame, just so we can fill that out. All in all, I'm just trying to triple check that I'm basically adding some in that are nice and they're not too dense here and there. I don't want to add in too much throughout the tree. However, if you do add too much, just hold down on your eraser. It will have set it to the same brush then, and you can just hack away into there and now just create gaps in your tree. So you can create like a gap like there, for example. I could go ahead and just like thin the edges if I wanted to, tapping, kind of just breaking up the edges. And this is something you can do later on with a mask if you really wanted to, if you feel like you've added too much. Now at this stage, we are going to go ahead and start colouring in on top of those, because we're going to clip directly to it. So we're going to create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. We're going to go to our colours and grab the red at the bottom of the third column. You can put your brush size back to 20%, and we're just going to start layering in the red tone throughout here and push the purple back in the scene. So like where I've got my big cluster here, I'm going to make sure I add in a good chunky amount of red. I'm going to keep tapping my way all the way through these areas, and I'm going to try and focus like in certain areas a bit more red, and then in some areas I can leave the purple. For example, maybe I'll leave the purple towards this left hand edge of the scene a little bit more. I'm not trying to say I'm not going to add any red there, The red is somewhat the kind of main color. The purple is just there to give us some like leaves that are potentially just hidden and not getting any lighting perhaps. So I can add in some red in the gaps and maybe in some of the fairer areas there, but just leave the majority of that left hand side a little bit more purpley. But where applicable, I'm going to try and just add in some more red, especially more so over here. But I do want those purples to shine through too. I want to have that lovely balance between everything. Then go to your colors. We're then going to go ahead and work in some oranges. We'll just keep it on the same layer. You can create a separate layer if you'd like to though. Top of the second column now, and then we'll start layering in some lovely oranges, and they will slowly kind of start to blend as well with the colors underneath. So the purple, the red, because it's on the same layer as the red as well, you will definitely get some scattering. And I'm just tapping and dragging in certain directions and then also pushing as well, just trying to get those lovely autumnal colors. And they will start to, again, just layer on top of the red. And then of course they're also on top of the purple, so you get all of these lovely tones just making their way through. And then maybe I'll cover up like the end over here with a little bit more of the yellow, just because it's like right on the very edge, and so it would be getting the lighting because lighting's coming from actually down here. So yeah, if you can try and work in some areas, maybe towards the bottom edges, perhaps a little bit more yellow. Now, it's not to say that that's where the lighting would be the most yellow. It's just, we'll try and just somewhat nod to the light source kind of direction. We're then going to go ahead and add in some yellow. So that's going to be top of the third column. And keep this one a bit scarce, to be honest with you. Like if you can just tap in certain areas, and don't be afraid to also do it in the purple areas as well. They can have little patches. This is just a really fun, very quick and easy kind of way of just layering in these beautiful autumnal colors in a very painterly like style today. And just a bit grungy at the same time. I've been really enjoying the new brushes for kind of grungy aesthetics, not so much for what my normal style is, to be honest with you. The new brushes in 5.4 have definitely got some more edgy kind of roughness to them, in my opinion anyway. Now we're going to use that brush then to continue the rest of the design, and that is going to be then back down to the tree. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it to the tree. We'll go to our colors and we're going to grab the middle of the first column. Brush size probably wants to be a bit smaller, maybe around about 5%. And we're using a blue now. In fact, I'm going to go up to about 8% just to highlight on the left-hand side some lighting along kind of like the tree grooves, etc., as I always like to kind of call them. So I'm going on top of some of those root lines and just trying to show how they kind of maybe flow up and into the actual main body of the tree. And then I'm going to leave like darkness in the gaps, because that will be where the lighting is not quite making its way into there. You could add like a tiny bit of blue, perhaps like down into there, along maybe like a root line there, but ultimately that's all we need to do on this side in terms of that color. We'll go to the bottom though of the same column now. So this one's a little bit brighter, probably want to be around about 6%. And then you just want to kind of paint in a little bit closer to the edge of the tree, some brighter blues. So these are like reflecting kind of like the blue of the sky almost into the side of the tree, just highlighting kind of like the top edges of some of the root lining down there. Keeping it very, very simple. Now you could go ahead and perhaps add in some like blue lining like into some of the branches of the tree, but we've got a light source that's going to be coming across, so I don't want to necessarily add in too much too early. But you could, like for instance, like paint in a line here, perhaps like a line along that branch maybe, but don't do too much. Keep it to a minimum for now. Let's then go ahead and go to our colors. We're then going to add in some highlights, and the highlight is actually going to be the top here of the sixth column. I'm going to go back to around about that 7 or 8%. I'm going to work it in on the right hand side of the tree on the same layer. It's perfectly fine. It might go a tiny bit bigger. 8%. I'm going to make my way down the tree, creating little groove lines down it, trying to show where and how the lighting is landing onto here. Maybe it lands on this like big root here perhaps, and then like leaving big grooves in here. Keep your pressure kind of nice and light as well at certain times, but you can see that lighting then is going to come across. It's going to bathe this side of the tree, underside perhaps of this little branch up here. And this is why we didn't want to add in too much blue, because we've got branches here that we could color in a little bit with some beautiful kind of highlight tone here, just coming across the tree, landing wherever we feel applicable. Little dashes here and there just to make it a little bit more uneven. And then we'll go to our colors. We're going to add in a slightly brighter color on top of that So we're going to move to this color here, the middle of the fourth column. Again, a little bit smaller, maybe around about 5%. And then you can go down some of those lines, just brightening them up, keeping your pressure a little bit lighter where possible. And don't wrap this lighting all the way around to the left-hand side. Like, you don't want to be highlighting that and that. It's too far round the tree, if that makes sense. You can wrap it on top of like the roots that's maybe stick up a little bit more. And definitely like the underside of this branch here, a little bit in the tree, a little bit something like that. So you end up with this kind of lighting effect. So we've got the kind of two-tone happening. Now we might add in some brighter highlights later on, but for now we're going to go ahead and do the ground. So we're going to go down to the layer here. So we can collapse our tree down for a second. Earlier on we brought this down to 50% opacity or lower than. Now you can see the whole of the ground. We can then go ahead and create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. But before we add in some color, let's go to our colors and grab the top left of the palette, which is the same color as the ground. So if we go back to the ground layer and using our new brush at 100% opacity, you can just rough up the edges now using the brush just to kind of make them look a little bit more kind of like grassy almost, or just like, you know, just unperfect. Imperfection is perfection in this kind of instance. You know, you want your ground to like look a bit growthy almost. So I'm just going to let that kind of rise up there, maybe a little kind of bit of something down there. Some straight edges are perfectly fine, like here and here, but let it get a little bit kind of uneven. Then we're going to go up to that clipped layer. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to work in some purple and reds. We're going to add them in brighter than they will end up being, so bear with me. We're going to go middle of the second column there, back up to a 20% opacity, and I just want you to kind of work in some kind of purple up towards those edges. And then what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and remember that because the light source is there and that light's going to come across, basically the tree in this area here is going to be shadowed. So you would only technically color like here and here technically, and then leave like a bit of a gap. Now we're going to undo that and try and do it with a bit more sort of purpose. So maybe about 30%, I can kind of just draw in some lines. I can leave dark patches in between. You can see there's like a dark patch and a dark patch. And then up in behind the tree, we can definitely brighten up the land a little bit more. It's not to say you can't add any over here. We will just have to simply just sort of scrap them a little bit later on. So just a few little lines, just dashing down. We'll go to our colors and grab this red here. It's the bottom of the third column, and we'll kind of repeat and layer on top basically. So it's going to be like our foundational kind of layer to the ground. Obviously it's a bit artistically sort of taking a bit of a liberty because it's a bit more kind of like autumnal kind of design today. I'm kind of just like adding in bright reds and purples, etc., in areas that will ultimately be like grass. So you wouldn't maybe get these bright reds on the ground, but as long as you've got these kind of diagonal lines pointing down, you should end up with like a little bit of kind of just understanding of the flow of the land. Now, I've already done mine pretty light, but we can tap on it and just bring it down a smidge, down to, let's say, like 60%, before we then start to work in some more brighter tones as well. So let's go ahead and create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. We'll go to our colors. We're going to grab a orange tone. So let's actually grab the orange over here, bottom of the sixth column. And similar process, you're basically going to use the work that you've just done as a guide now. So I'm going to just follow the lines that I've already drawn in. I've gone down that edge. I can see a line there too. I can just follow on top of those, brightening up this edge over here, especially because that's where the lighting is going to be. And you can get right up against behind your tree because we've got multiple layers to add in a second. It's perfectly fine to just layer that in along the edge. You can bring your brush size down to like a 20% and perhaps even like tap and push to create like little patches in the ground. Maybe it's a fallen leaf or something like that, but or something that you just want to maybe brighten up in the flow of your land down here. So I'm just going to create like a groove line that runs off, and I'm going to leave like a dark patch here because I just want it to be uneven. I want it to not have that too much of that purposeful kind of shaping and like, you know, too perfect. There we go. Another little line running behind the back there as well. That's actually looking okay. We can keep it simple for now. Let's then go to our colors. Let's work in some brighter tones, such as like a yellowish tone, such as, let's grab the bottom of the seventh column there. We're going to go ahead, I'm going to create a separate layer, tap on it and clipping mask it, because what I like to do is I like to be more cautious in Procreate. If you create a separate layer, for example, in the last one, if I want to tone the oranges down, I can tone the oranges down. I don't have to worry about destroying the image based on what we've done. So I can separate these tones, and then when I'm happy, I'll just layer them all back in. So on this new empty clipped layer, we're going to layer in some yellow, primarily up towards this edge, because this is where the lighting is going to be at its brightest, because the sun is going to be coming across, kissing and bathing this side of the land as it comes across. It's going to catch on the edge here, and you can let that lovely lighting just run all the way up in behind. And I'm kind of just very lightly just blending them into that kind of orange tone that sits underneath as well now. So now you should start to see like a lovely build up of color. We could go even brighter, but again, I think I want to keep hold of that kind of brightness right till the very end. So if you want to save on your layers, I'd recommend you pinch the bottom 3 together, but if you're not worried about your layers, just swipe from left to right on all 4, group them together and just call it bank. So rename it and call it bank. The land banked on that left-hand side. We can then zoom out a little bit. Let's go ahead and then start working in the next part of the design, which is actually going to be the sort of distant pieces of land. So we're going to go ahead and create a new layer, drag it all the way underneath your water at the very bottom there. Go to your colors. We're going to start off with this color here, top of the second column from the right. Maximum opacity size can be around about that 20% mark. And then I want you just to kind of go round in a circular motion and just follow the line of the guide all the way until it just kind of tucks underneath the landscape there in behind. And as long as you kind of fill it in, then go back with like a 13 or 14%. You might even be able to like purposely kind of draw in like little rounded kind of shapes to it, a nod perhaps to some like distant trees. But the brush is so grungy that in the distance there, it just looks like it's either a collection, like a forest basically. And there's lots happening and lots of kind of granular bits of detail, but we haven't really tried to do that. Then we'll go ahead and create a new layer. We will drag it underneath our last layer that we were working on. So we'll hold down, drag underneath. I'll collapse the bank down to keep it nice and organized. Let's go to our colors. Let's grab the middle of the same column. We're going to work in the next line coming down here. So I can just very quickly just sort of color in underneath. And then again, just kind of circular motion to kind of just scatter in this brush, run in behind the previous one, like so. Again, we've got another layer to create, so we'll create a new layer, drag it underneath, go to your colors and grab the bottom of the same column. And then that distant line over there, we're just going to go ahead and just kind of almost create just like a straight line, because this one should be so much further back that it won't get too much detail. So you can just run it along the line. There we go, nice and simple. It's super, super far back. And to sort of add to the fact that that is a little bit further back, I'm going to go to my colors. I'm going to grab the middle of the far right column. I'm going to go to my brush. I am going to change it. I'm going to go to basics and Forester brush. It's basically a soft air brush. And I'm going to set the brush size to like a 5%. And we're just going to lightly, and you could have kept the same brush, but I like to use a soft airbrush for this kind of thing. I've put a mark in there by accident. So I'm just wiggling here just to create some kind of atmospheric lighting, just kind of separate those two layers a little bit in between there. Just very, very subtle bit of change in lighting. And talking about lighting, let's actually change the sky. So let's go ahead and create a new layer and drag it underneath our 3 hills for a minute. We'll come back to them in just a second. We're going to go ahead, we'll keep the same color, same brush, and we're going to work in the light source that's going to be just over here. So I'm going to go up to around about a 20 to 25% brush size and just circular motion very, very lightly until you start to build up a little bit of yellow. This may not come across on camera too well, but you want a little bit of yellow just in this circular space over here. And then go to your colors and grab the bottom right of the palette and then work in some blue round the top left. Look how I'm like bending my sort of flow of my hand here, just blending in the blue round the top and just in behind those hills over there. And you can press quite firm over here until you get quite a bit of blue and just let that blend across, because you want the blue into what is the background color, which is like a bit of an orangey tone, and then into this bright tone over here. It's very subtle, but it's just a nice little sort of backdrop of color. It ties it all together. We're then going to go ahead and work in another layer in front of our little hills. So let's go ahead and let's pinch all 3 of those hills together now. On that same layer, we're going to go ahead and just tap on it and alpha lock it for a minute. Go to your colors. I'm going to grab the middle of the far right column again. You could use the brush that we're using. I nearly said soft airbrush, but it's not. And I've just brought the size down to around about like a 7%. I'm just going to go along that horizon, wiggling my pen as I go, just to kind of make it uneven and a little bit higher in certain spots, just a little bit of lighting along that horizon line. And then let's go ahead and also add some color to the water in a similar fashion. So we'll tap on the water. You can just tap on it and alpha lock it if you'd like. You can then go to your brush and make it a little bit bigger, around about say 20%, and then go left to right along there, blend that down, and just add in a bit more color and a bit more color until you do end up with quite a bit of yellow on the water, but it blends down to a lovely dark tone right in front of us. So don't be afraid to layer that in, and then just as long as you still end up with a bit of blue right down here in front of us, you should still have that lovely reflection of the sky kind of idea, but you understand that it's still water. Now let's go ahead and then reflect those hills. So we actually just pinch them all into one layer. If we swipe it to the left and duplicate it and drag it above on top of the water, tap on it and then clipping mask it, and then tap on it and turn off the alpha lock of this version. We then want to go ahead and we want to go to our cursor. We want to flip it vertically and drag it down until you end up with your reflection. And if you make sure snapping is turned on in the bottom left there, you'll get 3 lines eventually, like there, all in orange, which lets you know you've moved perfectly down. And then that way you know that you've moved it enough to align correctly. Then go ahead and go to your adjustments and go to the option of motion blur and drag down in a vertical fashion down your canvas in a straight line. And I think round about sort of 30 looks pretty good. You get some nice sort of long droopy lines there. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to my layer and just bring the opacity down to 50-ish%. Now, this would actually be a test of how much you've added in with that light tone in the water, because if I go back down, I can't really see too much of my reflection there. So on my water layer, with the same color and should still be the same brush, which it is, I'm going to now start layering in even more, pressing quite firm and then blending down, because I want the sort of reflection there to be the darkest element. So I've pressed quite firm along the sort of edge of the water there in the distance. Again, just trying to make sure I still get that blend out down here, but I want that reflection there to be quite strong. So I might even go ahead and bring the opacity back up a little bit, up to around about 83%. So I get those beautiful lines just floating down our water. Let's turn off our guide as well, because we want to be able to see fully what it is we've created at this stage without having the lines in play. Let's go ahead and add some extra details to the water. So if we tap above this layer here and we create a new layer, tap on it and also clipping mask it to the water. If we go to our colors and we go ahead and grab the middle of the 5th column, go back to your brush and right to the bottom to the creative section and the Bicano brush. Maximum opacity size can be quite small, around about 6 or 5%. And then you can just go horizontal. And the easiest way, as I always do this, if I undo that and go to canvas and turn on the drawing guide, you get a grid. And then if you tap on the layer and add the drawing assist, you now should be able to go perfectly horizontal without it getting in the way. Now, you can actually go ahead and turn off the guide so that the lines aren't in the way, but the layer is still assisted, meaning it's still going to use that same system. So now I can just go ahead and push horizontally just to create some ripples in the water, especially quite close to us as well. They will look quite effective and look really good and just give you that little bit of a nod that it is actually water. You know, just a few, just peering in from behind this piece of land here, and make your brush size a bit smaller, maybe 2 or 3% as you make your way a little bit further back. Some nice light strokes across the water will look absolutely fantastic, because they'll just give you that very speckled look in the water because of the brush itself. So it'll give you that lovely speckly look. And just a little bit further back. Lovely. Now, the trick here is actually to go ahead and go to the layer. We want to change the blend mode to color dodge and then just bring that right down to around about 40%. So once you bring that down, you get some lovely subtle lines. Now for me, that one in the middle there, too chunky. So I'm just going to go ahead and just trim away at it. Just try and thin that line out. Don't make it too obvious or too, eye-catching, to be honest with you. Just a few subtle lines and ripples is what we want there to give that nod of water. Now the next thing is something I typically love to do, because I love to create blending of lighting, is to go ahead and create a new layer underneath the bank. If you go to your colors and again you grab the middle of that far right column, change your brush again back to the option of basics and the Forester brush and just make it around about say 35%. Go around in a circular motion just over here and just very lightly, just towards this right hand side of our scene, just kind of create like a ball of light, a little bit lighter. So you can see it on the thumbnail there. If I turn it on and off, you can just see it just feathers that lighting out a little bit more. Now, if you tap on that and change the blend mode to color dodge, to me, what that does is that just desaturates it a little bit more and gives us some different tones in there. Now, to be honest with you, this is completely optional. You can not do this if you're really happy with your work, which, to be honest, I still think looks quite good without it, but it softens the work a little bit further back. So if you want to, you could do it, or even just bring the opacity down, say 50%, and see what halfway looks like. It's totally up to you. Now, to be honest with you, you could be completely done here, to be honest, and just leave it as it is. However, I'm going to add in some additional little bits here and there. Now, these are just like little tips that you can do just to change up your design here and there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the tree. I'm going to go to the actual tree layer. And what I could do is tap on my smudge tool and go to the option of basics and the forester brush. And some of those lines are just so sharp and so defined that why don't we just smudge them out a little bit? Why don't we blur them out? Why don't we just soften those just a tiny bit? So just wiggle your pen along them we'll get some different opacities, and you can just smudge and just feather out some lines here and there. Just get rid of the harshness of some of these lines, especially when they go underneath some branches or collection of leaves, should I say. And you can decide where they come in and out, so you can just get rid of them. You can smudge out that gap there and just let it then reappear under here. Just get rid of that one too, and we can just really soften up some, like, and just kind of match up to the lighting a little bit more. We're not trying to blur necessarily, but we're just trying to, you know, take away the distractions a tiny bit. So let all those branches just come in and out and disappear, and just see what the difference looks like. To me, it looks so effective when you do this, especially when, again, you can pick and choose where you want them to kind of run on top of the leaves or where they should disappear underneath, and just like some really harsh lines here and there, just soften them out. And what we could do is even go ahead and go to our colors and grab the top left of the palette, which is the same as the tree. You can go to your brush and go back down to the one we've been using, the creative brush, and by Chen, and then we're going to go ahead and just set the brush size to like a 1%, and just maybe a bit bigger, 1 or 2%, just run along some of the lines, just changing them up. Trees are not smooth and perfect, are they? You can just really, you know, change up the tree if you want to, make it a bit more kind of edgy and a bit uneven, a little bit sort of a bit roughed up a little bit. That's what I'm looking for, really, is rough. And then just keep jumping between that and the smudge tool. So just, you can soften up the edge as well if you wanted to, as long as you get rid of the excess. So what I mean is, take a look at this. I've smudged this edge, but look at this line here. Can you see this little line that kind of protrudes? I need to push that back into the body of the tree so that it doesn't get left with any kind of residue just running around. Now, you could potentially even just go ahead and tap on the tree layer and go to your adjustments and gauge and blur, and just blur the shape of it like 2%. That will just soften those edges the tiniest bit, but you'll lose a bit of sharpness, so it's totally up to you if you want to do that or not. A 1 or 2% will look good. I'm going to tap on my adjustments at 2%, and that will have just softened up the edges, and then I can get back in there if I really want to with my brushes we just demonstrated, and I can bring in some sharpness where I think is necessary. So you can bring it in, you can take it away, you can add new. We get a little bit of everything by doing this, so you end up with a really lovely variation. And also, please make sure to tag me in your finished creations. If you've made it this far, make sure to tag me in your finished creations. It's awesome to see your work. Let me know as well what you think of the Procreate 5.4 update. My thoughts being is that there's a lot of brushes to try and work out and get used to. So yeah, it's taking me personally a little bit of time just to get through them and find purposes for them. And I just want to use them and demonstrate them in tutorials and just see how you get on with them, to be honest with you. So I hope you enjoy it. Now, the only thing then I'm otherwise going to do is on the actual tree here, I'm going to create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. I'm going to go to my blend mode and change it to add, and I'll just drop it down to 50%. I'm going to go to my colors. I'm going to go ahead and actually grab the bottom of the bottom of the second column from the right. Brush wants to be the same one we're using already by Chen, and then we're going to go to about 7% brush size. Just run down some of the edges, just really lightly if you can, just to maybe add in a slightly brighter edge. Not the whole edge, you don't want to do the entirety of it, but just little glimpses of brightness just popping their head through. And you can do that all the way up and down the tree if you want to, but really it's just trying to make sure that in certain edges we just end up with a little bit more, just a little bit of something just to break it up. So just a slightly lighter edge there. Then I'm going to go ahead and somewhat do a similar process, but with the bank. I'm going to open up the bank. I'm going to create a new layer, tap on it, clipping mask it, change the blend mode from normal to the option of add. I'm going to bring the opacity though down to about 20% because we don't need a lot here. I'm going to go to a bit of a smaller size, maybe around about 4 or 5, and then just kind of, especially on the edge over here, we'll go a bit bigger. I'm just going to kind of lightly try and patch in some brightness on that edge over here, right up against the edge of the land, maybe where I think that the lighting is landing perhaps on this edge over here a bit more. A few little wiggles and scratches and like unevenness, like I'm literally shaking my pen up and down here now to create like blades, almost like blades of grass, almost just little tufts of something catching some lighting. Now feel free to also tap on that, bring that up if you want to, maybe around about 26 to 30%. And if it's too bright or it's too solid, just grab your smudge tool in the same way we just did. Maybe smudge out the bottom edge of it just to soften that up, get rid of that kind of too much of a grungy look if that's too much for you, or just soften up the edge if you feel like it's necessary. Just lightly bathe it in there, you know, smudge it out. There we go, just some nice little subtle highlights, especially back there as well, just trying to break it up, give yourself a little bit more light at the front here. Now, I always encourage you to also somewhat destroy your design in a way by creating a new layer again, going to your colors and grabbing the shadow color top left of the palette, and then maybe getting in there now and getting in behind some of your lighter tones that you created and create tufts, and like divots and unevenness, and especially here as well with your shadow that would form from the roots. So you want to get in behind the root there, just kind of shadow that out a tiny bit, add in a little bit, and then maybe like a little bit here and there just to break that up. So 4 or 5%, just like little flick ups, like little tufts, little unevennesses to the ground. And you can make it really, really small, almost like blades of grass. You can break up like lines that you can see of repetition, perhaps. Just getting in there and just tufting it all up. But that's completely optional. It is completely optional. If you've made it into this part of the design, you should be learning like the differences and things that I'm looking for in my design, you know, breaking up just too much solid color. And these are like the bits that I look for after I've literally stopped recording, you know, the things I can get in there and just adjust manually, just take over and say, no, do you know what? I need a little bit more of something here. I need a bit more precision. I need a little bit more, you know, effort in these areas. But all in all, I'm really happy with how that looks. And one final trick I typically like to do as well is a lighten effect. So if we collapse the bank down and our tree, make sure your guide is also off. So let's turn off our bank, tree, and then you're left with just your background. You want to go ahead and just where you are here, swipe down with 3 fingers and go copy all, 3 fingers and go to paste. And you'll see in your layers, it will paste your design in. Then bring back in your other elements at the top, minus your guide, of course. Then this layer here, change the blend mode from normal to lighten. You actually won't see any visual change if you tap between them. But if you go to your adjustments, you go to gauge and blur and you swipe from left to right, you'll end up with a bit of a haze. So watch this, you go left to right and you just haze it out a little bit, like it's a really cold, crisp morning perhaps. So like a 9% looks really good here because you end up with that slightly softer background. And look at the difference if I turn this on and off, I'll make it as big as possible, turn it on and off, you can see that slight haze in the background. I'm going to leave it with that. I love it. I think it looks super glowy, and I'm going to pinch with 2 fingers and go full screen before, and we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this autumnal style design. As always, make sure to tag me, as I said, in your finished creations wherever you decide to share them, like Instagram and Facebook. And also come and check out my Patreon, because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month. And the catalogue sits at over 150 at the time of recording. Those tutorials are not available on YouTube. They're only available on Patreon. And at the same time, you can also support me and all the work that I do here. Anyway, if you enjoyed this tutorial here on YouTube, you'll love this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.